Hello everybody, Miss Fleming here. This video is going to be for the third clarinet part on Grand Galop, the Circus March. I know a few of you were absent, but about 3 weeks ago I helped lead a sectional rehearsal on this piece, and we talked a lot about what a circus march is and how we need to go about approaching this piece. So circus march is a march. We've heard of marches before, I'm sure, but this one's supposed to be a little bit fun. It's gonna it makes me want to dance when I hear it. It sounds like a dancing song. However, it is still a march, so there are sections in it that sound lyrical, while there are also sections that sound just a little bit more rigid and march-like. So starting at the beginning, actually, if you look at the words, in the parentheses it says 1 beat per measure. This is typical of a march feel, so it doesn't necessarily mean that there's only 1 beat in a measure, because obviously if you look at the time signature it's in 2/4, so there are 2 beats. But what it's telling you is that you want to feel the macro pulse. In class, almost every day actually, we work on macro and micro pulses with our hands tapping on our collarbone. That's usually the micro pulse, which means the smaller beat. And with our foot, we do the macro pulse, which is the big beat. So in this piece, it's saying you should feel the macro pulse, or you should be playing with a metronome on the macro pulse, but there are still 2 beats in a measure. So I'm going to count an example for you. This is starting at the beginning. 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1. So if you notice, I am snapping on beats 1. I'm putting a lot of emphasis on 1. That's kind of where you land. And then 2 propels you forward to the next 1. Something that helps me visually and kind of like get the pulse in my body. Like I said, typically we do pulse on the collarbone or our feet, but for me it helps to snap in a circle because it makes me think of 1 is down here and 2 is propelling us forward. So it's 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1. So if that helps you, please use that. It's been very helpful for me. I've probably been doing it since I was in middle school just because it helps me feel the pulse. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start digging in. I'm gonna start at the very beginning and I'm gonna count, and what I want you to focus on is counting dynamics and also counting with the correct articulation. So we have a lot of accents, and when you count, you wanna count with the accents. 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So if you notice there, I did a lot of the dynamics, especially with the hairpins when we're crescendoing into those fortes. For the most part, we're playing mezzo forte. However, at the beginning, we start at forte, drop down to mezzo forte, and then we have a lot of crescendos back up to forte and back down to mezzo forte. So since it stays in mezzo forte, forte land, we don't want to get too soft. And again, back to the sectional, there can never be enough third clarinet, so play this out. When you practice this, I want you to feel the dynamic differences, but just know that when you put it in the ensemble, you're going to either get buried or sound very quiet because you are on the third part. So naturally, we want to kick it up about a dynamic. So this time, instead of counting, since I did count with you just now, I'm going to play it on the correct pitches just so you can get it in your ear. A few things that I want you to remember is that once we get through the first ending, there's a repeat sign, and that means go back to measure 5. If you feel like you get confused or lost whenever there are first endings or repeat signs and you kind of get lost on the page, please either use your finger pencil to circle it and make a mental note, or use a pencil, like a real pencil with lead, and circle it, make a star next to it, just anything that you can identify as, this is where I need to go to every time, so that when we are playing through the music, you go back and you find it immediately. Another thing that I want you to focus on that we've discussed quite a few times is Accidentals. Accidentals are not in the key, so they're very interesting and they're very important. I want you to bring those out as much as you can. So especially in this first section, there are G sharps, there are F sharps, and then we go back to F naturals, which aren't accidentals, but we go back to the key. So really bring out all those sharps. There's also a D sharp at the beginning. I almost forgot that one. And remember that D sharp is regular D with the bottom side key. That's D sharp. And then G sharp is just the G sharp key here. And then for our F sharps, since there aren't Fs around them, we're gonna do first finger F sharp. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and play this just so you can get it in your ear. So a few things in there. I think I could have done better dynamics, honestly, and this is something that you need to do on your own as self-assess. It helps to record yourself, play it back, and then you can pick and choose what you want to work on next or what you could change to make it better. I think what I could have done better was dynamics. I could have done better dynamic differences. Also, ideally, I would be playing with a metronome, but right now I'm using my phone to record myself, so I don't have that. When you play, you have to use a metronome. You have no excuse not to practice without a metronome. And remember, the order that we practice is counting with a metronome, counting and fingering with a metronome, playing the correct rhythms on a concert F, and then playing them on the correct notes. So you have quite a few steps before you get to what I've just done. And you need to do all of those steps many times just to make sure that you have the rhythm solid before worrying about anything else. Rhythm is key here. If you're not playing at the right time, you're not playing the right note. Something that I wanted to point out that I noticed after I started playing, where was it? I guess I can't remember. If I can think of it, I'll go back. But just remember to really bring out those accidentals. Oh yeah, that's what it was. Measure 14. On beat 1, you have a G sharp. On beat 2, you have an E and then a G sharp. Remember, accidentals carry through the measure. So take your pencil. I want you to use your pencil for this and write in a sharp or circle the note so you know that is still a G sharp. We cannot be missing that in class. We just don't have time to focus on that. This is something you should be practicing on your own anyways, and it's a good skill to have for future pieces as well. So just make sure that in measure 14 you're playing G sharp and that it carries through the measure. For time's sake, I'm going to move on. I want you to notice that I did play the pickups into 25 that time. And when I played them quite a bit quieter because if you notice, the dynamic switches from forte to mezzo piano. And again, when you're counting, you should be counting these differences in dynamics. So I'm going to go ahead and start pick up to 25, and I'm going to count this rhythm and then all the way through 43. 2 te 1 te 1 2 1 te 2 2 1 te 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 te 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 te 1 2 1 2 te 1 te 1 2 1 te 2 2 1 te 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 te 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 te 1 2 1 2 1. So again, pay special attention to dynamics, pay special attention to accents. Accents really need to be brought out. Again, I noticed immediately that I could have done my accents better the first time that I played through that or sang through that. And again, there's a repeat sign from the first ending back to 25, and we also have one back at 5, so make sure that you're not getting confused and going all the way back to measure 5. Take your pencil, write a star next to 25, circle it, highlight it, do something just so you know that when you get to, I think it's 7, 8, 9, 40, measure 40, you have to go back to 25, play through, and then go to the second ending. Again, there are a few accidentals in here, so just make sure to bring out the D sharp, remember, bottom side key, regular D, and the F sharp. This time, immediately following the F sharp, there's an F natural. So instead of using first finger F sharp, we're going to use thumb and then the bottom 2 side keys, because then when we go to F, all we have to do is lift off the side keys and we're there. I'll play that as an example. This is starting in measure 36. I know I start on a D sharp, but make sure that you're paying attention to the F sharp and F. I'll show you my fingers. So again, that's something that you can practice on your own. Again, this is a technique that clarinet players use a lot of the time, so make sure that every time you practice it the same way, so when we perform it, you're comfortable. This time I'm going to go all the way back to 25, and I'm going to play it just so you can get it in your ear. But remember, count with the met, count and finger with the met, play it on a concert F with the met, and then put it on the instrument. But I'm just doing this to help you so you know what it's supposed to sound like. So again, dynamic differences. The first time we play this through, it has to be at a mezzo piano. The second time we play it through, it even warns you on the pickup notes, we're playing at forte. So there should be a pretty big difference, because that's skipping over mezzo forte entirely and just going straight to forte. It'll be easier with the full ensemble when more people add in. Again though, you are the third clarinet, and there can never be enough third clarinet. You are what stabilizes us as a section, and your part is also very important in the grand scheme of things. You have a lot of root notes, so that means that you need to play loud enough for everybody else to hear. So make sure that you bring your part out. We're going to move on to 43 just for time. If you look at 43, there are a lot of exciting things happening. First and foremost, the dynamic. The dynamic drops all the way to piano, which means something interesting is about to happen. They're warning you. So they're warning you about this key change. We talked about this in our sectional as well. Now we are going from concert B flat to concert E flat, which means that we add 1 flat, and that flat is B flat. So remember, B flat is your A key and your register key. Go ahead and look in your part. Oh, or if you're playing B flat low, it's 1, 2, 3, 1. So I want you to look in your part starting at measure 43 and find the first B flat that you have. Take your finger, put it on your music and circle it, or grab your pencil and write a flat next to it, or also circle it. And just so we're all in the same place and we know where this first B flat is, it should be in measure 51. That's the first time we're seeing B flat in the key. Of course, there are a few spots where B naturals are written in. Now, because the B natural is not in the key, this is an accidental note, so it is important, and we do need to bring out the B naturals. There are also, I see a D sharp, more B naturals, E flats. Remember, E flats and D sharps are the same note. So it's thumb, 1, 2, and the very bottom side key. That is E flat and D flat. And I believe those are the only accidentals we have in here. It helps to look ahead and finger it just to make a mental note, or circle it if you need to. So for this, again, I would want you to count with the correct dynamics and accents, but since it's mostly just 1, 2, and there aren't any eighth notes in here, instead of counting, I'm just going to play it for you so you can get it in your ear. So I have a page turn here, so I have to pause, but I'm going to start playing in measure 55 this time. And again, I know that a few of you were absent when we had this sectional, but third part here is very low. We're playing in the shallow register, which means the lowest part of our clarinet. This means that we're putting more fingers down and we have a longer instrument to play through. So we need lots of air. And again, the lower the note is, the harder it's going to be to project it. So for this section, we're probably not going to play it at a true piano, especially as the third clarinets. I remember yelling at you and working with you to really play your low notes loud. So obviously it's all written at piano. We don't have a lot of dynamics written in here, so we're going to have to figure out where the phrasing goes. And it would be a very smart move to crescendo into lower notes and decrescendo when we're going back up. So I'm going to try this starting at 43 again, and I just want you to hear how I crescendo into the lower notes. And again, that's where my page turn is. But I thought that was a good example of how you should really dig into the lower notes. And you don't want it to be too abrupt or too sudden. It should be a swelling of sound. And we do this with air, consistency and speed, and then just, just like really blowing into the note, through the note. We don't want to think of it note by note, but we want to think of it as one giant phrase. All right. So that was the section that is 43 through 75, and that's a lyrical section. I remember working with the clarinets. Remember, we sound like a choir when we're playing this. There's a lot of chords. There's a lot of connected notes, so please make sure that it's smooth and it's one long phrase. Looking ahead, we're going to work on the rhythm between 75 and 83. And this is just a 4-measure rhythm that we're going to look at, and it's repeated again between 83 and 91, and then almost the exact same rhythm is between 91 and 95. So this rhythm is very important because it shows up at least twice, I would say 3 times. So I'm just going to go ahead and count it for you. Remember, count with a met, count and finger with a met, play on a concert F with a met, and then play it on the right note. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Remember, when we count, dynamics, accents, anything stylistic. I thought I did a really good job at the accents there. We really need to bring them out. Remember, the front of the note is the most important part. And this is all at fortissimo. Again, third clarinets, we can play even louder than fortissimo. We can do it. And we're going to need to, really. We're the foundation for this section. So please make sure that you're playing it at least at a true fortissimo. Here we're also looking at accidentals. So we have G sharps. We have a reminder that we're still playing B flat. And then we also have G natural back to G sharp. So remember, we're going to make that G natural sound interesting, the G sharp sound even more interesting, and then land on that A. I'm just going to play the 4 measures between 75 and 83 first. See how there's a lot of space between the accented notes, but there is still like a very heavy front of the note, and then it decays just very quickly, very slight. Then looking at the measures between 83 and 91, again, we have the same rhythm, very similar notes, but not quite. Now we have an F sharp, an A flat, and then in measure 89, we go from an F natural to an F sharp, so we're using side F sharp there up to a G. And again, dig into the accidentals. Looking at 91, like I said earlier, it's almost the exact same rhythm. The only difference is in the third bar, we don't have 2 quarter notes, we have 1 half note. And we started a mezzo forte that time, so we have to make sure that there's a difference between our fortissimo and our mezzo forte, and then we crescendo back up to a fortissimo into 95. So looking at 95, we're going to start on the pickup. This is the last section of the piece. I'm going to consider 95 to the end. A very similar style and section. It's kind of similar to the part where we had the little clarinet choir back at, I think it was, 43. It's similar to that, so we want it to be very smooth and connected, and it's one long phrase. So make sure that your air is blowing continuously and there's no gaps in your sound. It's all fortissimo. However, we still need phrasing in there. This still needs to be musical. So anytime that you go below the staff, again, we want to bring those out. So I see quite a few C's right before 103. And then we go back up into the staff. So every time you go into the lower parts of the staff, make sure you bring those F's out, the G sharps, because those are still interesting, D sharps. And then you can pull back just a little bit on your B flat. And remember, every time we play B flat, G, or A, your right hand should be down. This will help us with tuning. It'll just sound better in tune, I promise. And it'll also help us prepare whenever we do go over the break, which I don't believe we are in this piece, but you do need to keep your right hand down at all times for those notes. I'm going to go ahead and play it for you, just again, because the counting is fairly easy. I want you to count this before you play it, but I'm just playing it so that you know what it sounds like. This is the pickup to 95 all the way to the end. So a few things that I noticed after I started playing was it's probably going to be a little bit difficult to put phrasing in with a fortissimo sound. So make sure that you start at a dynamic, like a true dynamic that you can grow from. We don't want to start right off the bat as loud as we can because that's not musical. Also, looking at style at the very end, the very last measure. We've talked a lot about these accents, but this one lands on one of those little rooftop accents. It looks like a housetop. This means that it's quite a bit shorter than a regular accent, but there's still a lot of weight on the note. And also, in the context of the whole ensemble, everybody's going to be playing this together, I believe. I do believe everybody will be playing it together, so we need to match length. It can't be too long. If you notice, it is just an eighth note, and there's an eighth rest after it, so make sure you're not holding over, because it will sound funny if there's just one clarinet player hanging over on the very last note. So I'm going to play that example. I'm going to start at measure 119, and I want you to pay attention to my very last note. So it's not like cut off super short. I'm not stopping it with my tongue. I'm still letting it resonate, but I'm not holding the note over. I really hope this video was helpful. Keep practicing as much as you can. I know it's getting really annoying staying home so much. I'm sure you're enjoying some of the time at home, but I also hope you're taking advantage of this time to improve, because music always has room for improvement and it's fun to play. So I really hope that you're enjoying this piece as much as I am, and I can't wait to hear you guys in person again. Good luck, happy practicing, stay safe and warm.